Welcome to my world of nightmares. I'm about to take you on a journey through 3 of the scariest stories that have haunted me. These tales are not for the faint of heart. They delve into the darkest corners of fear, where reality blurs with the unimaginable. As I recount these chilling experiences, remember, sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones that lurk within our own lives. So brace yourself, and let's dive into the terror together. Story 1. The Man in the Crawl Space. I had just moved into my new apartment, a small, one-bedroom unit in a quiet part of town. It wasn't much, but it was cheap, and I needed a fresh start. The first night went smoothly. The second night, I started hearing things. It began as a soft scratching noise coming from the ceiling. Probably rats, I told myself. But by the third night, the noises changed. Heavy breathing, a slow, deliberate dragging sound. It was coming from the crawl space above me. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe an animal got in. Maybe I was just paranoid from living alone. But then on the fourth night, I woke up to the sound of my closet door creaking open. I froze. The room was pitch black, but I could hear something breathing. Slow, wet gasps. My heart pounded as I reached for my phone and turned on the flashlight. A man was crouching in the darkness, his face inches from mine. His eyes were wide and unblinking. His mouth hung open, a string of saliva dripping from his lips. His skin was pale, almost translucent, stretched tight over his bones. I screamed and scrambled backward, but he didn't move. He just watched me. I lunged for the door, throwing it open and sprinting outside. I called the police with shaking hands, barely able to get the words out. They arrived minutes later and stormed into my apartment. When they searched the crawl space, they found a makeshift bed, dirty blankets, food wrappers, a knife, and a hole carved directly above my bed. The police told me he had probably been watching me sleep for days, maybe weeks. I moved out that night. I don't know who he was or how long he had been there, but sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can still hear his breathing. Story 2. The Reflection That Wasn't Me. I never liked mirrors. There was something unsettling about them, how they captured every detail, every flaw, but never felt real. It started a few nights ago. I was brushing my teeth, staring at my reflection. My movements were normal, in sync, but as I turned away, I saw it move, just a little too late. I stopped. Slowly, I turned back. My reflection smiled at me. I wasn't smiling. I stumbled backward, my toothbrush falling into the sink. My reflection's grin widened, stretching unnaturally across its face. I turned and ran to my bedroom, slamming the door shut. My heart pounded in my chest. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I told myself it was just exhaustion, a trick of the mind. I forced myself to look into the mirror again. My reflection seemed normal. But later that night, as I was lying in bed, I heard a noise, the sound of glass cracking. I shot up, my body rigid with fear. The mirror in my bathroom, something was pushing against it from the other side. The glass splintered, spiderweb cracks spreading across the surface. A faint whisper slipped through. "Let me out." I grabbed my keys and ran, not even bothering to pack a bag. I slept in my car that night. When I returned the next day, the mirror was gone, just an empty frame hanging on the wall. I don't know where it went. I don't want to know. But sometimes, in the reflection of a window or a puddle, I swear I see something watching me, something smiling. I didn't go back to my apartment for days. I stayed at a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, avoiding mirrors, reflective surfaces, anything that might show me something I didn't want to see. But paranoia eats at you. It crawls under your skin, whispers doubts into your ear. Maybe you imagined it. Maybe it was just a dream. Maybe you're losing your mind. I kept telling myself that. But deep down, I knew. Something was wrong. On the fourth night, I woke up in a cold sweat. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text. "Unno, did you leave?" I stared at the screen, my breath catching in my throat. Another message came through. "Come back. Let me in." I dropped the phone like it burned me. The motel room suddenly felt too small, the walls closing in. I needed to leave. Now. I packed my bag and drove aimlessly for hours, stopping only when exhaustion forced me to. I ended up in a 24-hour diner, nursing a lukewarm coffee, my hands still shaking. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly glow on the cheap vinyl booths. That's when I saw it. The diner had a wall-length mirror opposite me, reflecting the rows of empty tables. But in my reflection, I wasn't alone. A shadow stood behind me, tall, featureless, watching. I spun around. Nothing. My reflection? Still staring. It wasn't mimicking me anymore. It tilted its head, its lips curling into that same unnatural grin I had seen before. Then, it stepped forward. The world tilted. My stomach lurched as I felt something pull, like a vacuum sucking the air from my lungs. The diner around me dimmed, the chatter of customers fading into silence. I blinked. I was inside the mirror. My reflection, it wasn't a reflection anymore. It was me, on the other side. I pounded against the glass, screaming, but no sound came out. I watched in horror as my other self, the thing pretending to be me, turned away from the mirror, stretched its arms and walked out of the diner. I was trapped. No one could hear me. No one could see me. And out there in my body, something else was living my life. Story 3. I woke up in someone else's body. I went to bed like normal, but when I woke up, everything was wrong. I wasn't in my bed. I wasn't even in my house. The room was unfamiliar, cold, sterile, filled with medical equipment. My hands weren't mine. They were pale, delicate, covered in scars I didn't recognize. Panic surged through me as I scrambled to my feet, searching for a mirror. When I finally found one, my stomach dropped. I was staring at a woman I had never seen before. Her eyes were wide and terrified, my eyes now. My breath came in short gasps as I clutched at my face, feeling the unfamiliar contours of my jaw, my nose, my lips. I bolted for the door, but before I could escape, a voice called from behind me. "You're awake." I turned. A man in a lab coat stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Don't be afraid," he said, stepping closer. "The transfer was successful." Transfer? My mind reeled. What the hell was he talking about? I backed away, my heart hammering. "What did you do to me?" His lips curled into a smile. "You signed the contract." I had no memory of any contract, no memory of agreeing to any of this. But then, a flicker of something deep in my mind, a buried memory clawing its way to the surface. A desperate deal. A promise made in fear. I stumbled as my vision blurred, my thoughts unraveling. I wasn't the first. I wouldn't be the last. And somewhere in my real body, someone else was waking up, smiling, living my life. I didn't sleep that night. The feeling of being watched was unbearable. No matter where I moved in the room, it felt like eyes were on me, like the very walls were breathing, waiting. At some point, exhaustion won. I passed out with the lamp on, gripping the blanket like a lifeline. Then around 3:12 a.m., I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing. A notification, a new video message. I swallowed hard, my heart hammering against my ribs. My fingers trembled as I opened it. It was a video of me, lying in bed, right now. The video was from a high angle, like it had been recorded from the ceiling. But there was no camera in the room. I was alone, or so I thought. As I watched, my breath caught in my throat. Something was moving in the background, a shape, crawling out from the corner of the ceiling. A pale hand reached down first, followed by the twisted, elongated body of something that should not exist. Its head jerked unnaturally, snapping toward the camera with hollow, black eyes. Then it looked at me, directly at me. The video cut off. I dropped the phone and scrambled to my feet, scanning the ceiling, the walls, the shadows. Nothing, but I could feel it. It was still here, watching, waiting. My suitcase was packed in under a minute. I didn't care about the deposit. I didn't care about anything except getting the hell out of that room. I yanked the door open and sprinted down the hallway. The elevator felt too slow, the lobby too empty. When I reached my car, I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking too hard to fit them into the ignition. Then, I made the mistake of looking into the rearview mirror. It was sitting in my back seat. Panic clenched my chest as I stumbled out of bed, my movements sluggish, my limbs unfamiliar. The body I was in felt wrong, slightly too tall, the fingers too long, the breathing not quite mine. I rushed to the mirror, heart pounding, barely able to process what I was seeing. The face staring back at me was not mine. I was a stranger, a man in his 40s, with hollowed cheeks, sunken eyes, and a deep scar running down the left side of my face. I touched my cheek, feeling the rough ridge of scar tissue under my fingertips. My breath hitched. What the fuck was happening? I backed away, looking down at my hands, his hands, veins prominent, knuckles bruised. I lifted the oversized shirt hanging from my unfamiliar shoulders, revealing dozens of fresh cuts across my chest. Some shallow, some deep, some still bleeding. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just some strange dream. This wasn't a hallucination. I was in someone else's body, and from the looks of it, I had woken up in the middle of something terrible. The phone call, I forced myself to breathe, to think. If this was someone else's life, then there had to be clues about who I was. I scanned the dimly lit apartment, a small, dingy place with peeling wallpaper and a musky stench. On the nightstand, a phone buzzed violently. I hesitated before picking it up. The screen displayed a single name, unknown caller. My throat tightened. Every part of me screamed not to answer, but my fingers moved on their own. I pressed accept. Static crackled through the speaker. Then a rasping voice whispered, "You weren't supposed to wake up." A chill rolled down my spine. Before I could speak, a loud bang sounded from the front door. Someone was outside, someone who knew I was here. Thank you for joining me on this terrifying journey through my 3 scariest stories. I hope you felt the chills and unease that come with each tale. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more spine-tingling content, and share your own scary experiences in the comments below. Remember, the darkness is always closer than you think. Until next time, stay safe and keep your lights on.